Okay, so in this episode, we are going to be building our photography portfolio. We're going to use Adobe InDesign because it allows us to put all of our pictures into one file, and it also allows us to control the size, the spacing, add text to the different pages, and then when we're finished, we can compile it as a booklet and print it out basically as a miniature magazine, specifically for you to take home, but also for you to hand in as your final portfolio in photography. So first thing we have to do is create a new file in InDesign. So go to New. In the title, you're going to want to call it Photo Portfolio. So after we've labeled it Photo Portfolio, some people like to put their name on it. So if you go underscore, I would go right. In your guys' case, you'd put your own last name. That way, if you submit it electronically someplace, it's not going to get mixed up with someone else's document that's also labeled Photo Portfolio. Okay, you want to have a regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So your width is 8.5, your height is 11. We're going to use regular inches. And then this document is going to have 12 pages. So make sure you type in 12 into the pages and make sure that facing pages is selected. Okay, we're only going to have 2 columns on this document. And those 2 columns, we don't want to have any column gutter, which is the space between the 2 columns. We want them to be side by side. What this is going to help us do is it's just going to help us with aligning different boxes and aligning our pictures to the page. Having those 2 columns set up ahead allows us to just slide things into place, and InDesign will snap them to the center of those columns. We also need to adjust our margins. We don't want our margins to be a 1/2 inch. We only want them to be 0.25. So set them to 0.25 inches. All top, bottom, inside, outside. Correct. 0.25 inches. So basically 1/4 inch. Once you have all those settings selected and edited, you can hit create. It's now going to create us a document that's really basic, has 2 columns, and from here we can start to create the different elements of our portfolio. First things first, we need a title, so we're going to use the text tool, and we are going to create a nice size text box at the top here. Okay, and then for this, we're just going to go, I'm going to do all caps, so I put my caps lock on. I'm going to call it Photography 10, and then call it Portfolio. Okay, now I know this isn't going to fit on the same line, so I'm going to hit enter and put Portfolio on its own line. And if you select and highlight all your text, you can then center it. Excuse me. And you can also make it much bigger. So 60 points usually fills up the text box pretty good, giving you a nice title for your document. Now, if you don't like this font, by all means, change it. I am not a huge fan of the default font. So I'm going to use this Franklin Gothic. And then underneath where it says Photography 10 Portfolio, we're going to put our name in the block. So hit enter, and we'll call this block 4. And then you put your name, not my name. Put your name. Okay, now we obviously don't want this to be so massive. We don't need to have the block 4 your name thing so giant. So we're going to put this as 10-point font. And we're going to just bring this down just a little bit. Okay, it makes it super tiny, but all it is just so that you can tell your portfolio apart from someone else's. Okay. The next step you're going to do is we are going to make one big picture for our title page here. So if you remember back when we did our Photoshop stuff and our other InDesign projects, to place any image into InDesign, we either need to have the image and then allow it to create the box, or we need to create the box ahead. So we're going to use this rectangle frame tool. When we click on it, it allows us to create frames, right? So we want to create one big, huge box here that basically covers the whole front of the page. Okay, now most of you are going to have a horizontal picture you put in here, but later on, if you want to change the size of the box to accommodate a vertical style portrait, that's by all means, that's good to go. What we're going to do though is we're going to add an outline around this box to just create a little bit of a nicer look. So we go to the stroke format stuff up at the top here, and we're going to go 6 points. So it creates a nice thick black line all the way around the outside. Now, obviously, you can change the color and you can do all kinds of different stuff to it, but we want to keep it black so it's nice and clean and real straightforward. Okay? So that is page one essentially done, other than you'd have to add in the picture later on. But like I said, for this first part, we're just going to create all the boxes first, and then we will put the appropriate pictures into those boxes later on. So page one is done. Double click on page two, and we're going to skip into page two. Now, if you don't have the pages tab open like I had, you can go to the window at the top, select pages here, and then this pages pop out will open up and you're able to see all the pages. So page 2 and 3, we're going to design them similarly because they are our horizontal composition and our vertical composition. But the problem is horizontal photos and vertical photos don't fit on a page very well the same way, because otherwise you'd have to turn the page, and we don't want that. So keep an eye out for what I'm going to do here. We're going to create two different titles. So the first one, click and drag and make a text box at the top here. And this one is going to be the horizontal photos. Okay. Again, we're going to center this, and 36-point font is the size we want because that will fill up this box nice and neat. Okay, now I don't know if you guys remember from before, but one of the ways to whoops. What is going on? One of the ways to copy and paste something in InDesign is to use the Alt key. So I've just zoomed out here so that you can see my pages, see the full page, okay? Or the full spread, I should say, both pages together. So if I want this same title, size and shape and font on this page, all I have to do is hold the Alt key on the keyboard and click and drag over to this side, and it will make a duplicate of the one that I pulled across from the other side. So then all I have to do is type in here, change this to vertical, and now I have my two labels and they match. Everything's perfect. Okay, I don't like this font, so I'm going to change the font first. No, you don't have to, but I'm going to. So you can either click and drag and then hold Alt. It doesn't really make a difference. The font is 36-point font. Click in here. Vertical. Okay? So now, our horizontal photos and our vertical photos are obviously shaped very differently. They're not going to fit the same way they would on the page. So rather than creating 10 individual boxes and trying to line them up and do all that stuff, we're going to create it all at the same time. Now, most of you should have done this, so all you have to do is just follow along. Okay? When you select the horizontal frame tool, click and drag to the right-hand side. Now, if we made our boxes this wide, it wouldn't work very well because they're too wide. No horizontal picture is that wide. So we need to come in just a little bit. And now when we create our boxes, we use the right arrow on the keypad. My mouse is still down. I have not lifted my finger. So I click one time with the right arrow and it adds a second column of boxes. And then I'm going to click 4 times with the up arrow and it creates 5 individual boxes. Now we don't want these boxes all stuck together touching each other. So we need to create space in between them so that we can add our labels in later. So to do that, you need to hold the control key on your keyboard and use the up arrow to create space between the boxes. Okay? And then you can add a little bit of space between the boxes left and right as well. When you have 10 boxes that are all identically the same size, now you can let go with your mouse and it will create 10 individual boxes. What? Once you have these 10 boxes, you need to center them inside the columns that we created. So take the selection tool, the black arrow in other words, select all of this column, and we can move the entire column of boxes at the same time. So we want to, if you notice, when I get to the center of this column, the pink arrow or the pink line, shows up. That tells me it's in the middle. I let go and I have nice centered boxes all the way down that column. I'm going to do the same thing on the left-hand side here. That creates boxes all the way down. Okay, and then now we're going to add in our labels. So for our labels here, we want to make sure that it fits between these boxes. So we're going to create ourselves a little text box that goes in between here. And our first one is formal balance. And we'll call this number 1, right? We want to center this in the box. And I'm just going to move the box down just slightly so the box is not directly touching this photo. Now, this is up to you guys. If you want to have your photos just be straight on the page, you can, or just like you did before with the box on the first page, you can add a stroke around those boxes, right? So that you get a nice little border that goes around them all. Okay? Because we have a second photo that's formal balance, I'm going to do the quick shortcut. I'm going to hold the Alt key and I'm going to drag this over to here and it's going to create a copy for me. So now all I have to do is double click and write the number 2. And then I can do this again. I can Alt and drag down. And it was formal balance before. And now I'm going to type in the box and type informal balance. Right? And then I'm going to drag a copy across to this side. So this is informal balance number 2. Drag another copy down here. This is leading lines. Number 1. And then we're going to go leading lines number 2. And then lastly is going to be our rule of thirds. So once we create the first one, rule of thirds number 1, I can then hold Alt and I can drag out 1, 2, 3 more copies of it. And all I have to do is change the number to be number 2, number 3, and number 4. Okay? So essentially that should be what your page looks like. You've got 10 photos on the page and you have 10 labels. Now, moving over to the vertical photos, they're going to look very different. We can't just place vertical photos on a page the same way you could horizontal photos because they're obviously a different shape, right? We don't want to have to turn our book on the side in order to get them to fit. So what works the best, I find, for our vertical photos, same as we did before, we're going to click, we're going to drag out to the side. This time we're going to go right to the edge. And we're actually going to create 4 columns, 4 columns and 3 rows. And I know that that makes 12 boxes, but we're just going to delete a couple of them when we're all done. So you would push the arrow, you would push the right arrow twice to give yourself 4 columns, and the up arrow twice to give yourself 3 rows. I guess it's the right arrow 3 times technically. And then we want to make space between all the boxes just like we did before. So hold the control key. We need to add some space top and bottom. And we want to add some space between them left and right. Now, not as much space left and right, but enough that you can tell between all the pictures. When you let go, it creates all 12 boxes. And I'm going to create another 2-point stroke that goes around all of them. And then I'm going to delete 2 of them. So I'm going to select this bottom left corner and delete it, and the bottom right-hand corner and get rid of them. Okay? And then from here, it's really easy. Because we've already made all of our labels, all we have to do is drag a copy across to the appropriate position. So I'm going to go click here and hold Alt and drag across formal balance 2, informal balance 2. Whoops. Then I have my leading lines 2, rule of thirds 1, rule of thirds 2, 3, and 4. Excuse me. Once you have all these boxes made and labels put in, make sure you save this. So just go File, Save. It will already have a label for it because you already labeled your document. Just make sure that you're putting it in a place where you know where this is, right? It does you no good to save it to some random place. So in this case, I know that I'm in my photography folder and I have all my other photos in here, and I'm going to save my portfolio to the same place. I'm going to write block 4 here so I can remember what I'm doing. Okay, so 3 pages down. Obviously, we got a bunch more to go, but these were the hardest ones because they have the most, well, I won't say the most pictures on them. There's a couple that have more pictures, but these ones are pretty clumsy because of all the labels and stuff. The rest we don't label as directly as we did this last set of pages. Okay? Now, something cool that you can do if you know that you wanted, say you wanted another version of this that it had more vertical photos. You could actually save a page here. You could save this entire page or copy this entire page, excuse me, and move it to another location. Obviously, we don't need to do that today, but if you did, it would be a simple process and you'd be able to use this page that you've created kind of as a template and move it along your document. So we're done page 2 and 3. We're going to move on to pages 4 and 5. So double click page 4 and it should bring up another blank page. Now, one thing I forgot to do, because we want to have our titles be consistent, we're going to just jump back to either to page 2 or to page 3. And you want to take this title, select it, and just go Control C, which is copy. And then when you go to page 4, you can Control V and paste in that title. And now we're going to call this Portrait Photos. Oops. Portrait Photos. Now, how many portrait photos did we take? You should have had 3 in total, right? But as per the same way we've been doing things, we're going to create 4 boxes. So we're going to drag out. We're going to go 1 click to the right and 1 click up. And then we're going to Control, make some space. Control right arrow, make some space. Okay, and I like bringing this back just a little bit because my portraits are all verticals for the most part. And if I leave them stretched to the edge, it looks a little weird. So I'm going to bring this back for these portrait ones just a little bit. And then I can take my selection tool here, select, center this on this column, and center these 2 boxes on this column. Okay, so now underneath these for our labels, this is going to be our selfie. My selfie. Make sure you're keeping your font and everything all consistent if you haven't been already. And then Alt and drag over, we copy it and we copy it to the bottom. And then this is going to be We'll call it traditional. Oops, traditional photo. And this is the artistic photo. Okay? So this bottom one would be the one where you don't show your face. The top one here is obviously your traditional basic portrait. And then in this box, so in this box, you will write a short description about yourself. Okay, so I don't know, like what you like to do. Okay, so obviously you're going to do this description part later. But for now, that's what it's going to look like. Okay? So next up, we have our HDR photos. So we take our title again. We're going to hit Alt, drag it across. So we make another copy of it. And then this would be considered HDR photos. Okay? Now your HDR photography, I have, it's a fairly complex layout that I came up with. But the only reason I did that is because not everybody's HDR photos will be the same as mine when it comes to the way things are laid out. So for your HDR photography, the biggest thing you want to have is you want to have 3 large images, your actual finished HDR photos, but then you also have to have your 9 small images that show that you know the different types of exposure. Okay, so we're going to create at the top here, we're going to create 3 small boxes with a little bit of space between them. And then we are going to have 1 big box that represents the finished photo. Okay, and you might need to like kind of build this and then wiggle things around a little bit to get them to fit. Now we might as well make this one be only half a page. And these 3 can be a little bit wider. And then we will copy this and paste it down in here. To give ourselves a second picture. And then if we did this right, we should be able to copy and paste these boxes and it will create a layout that is mirror image of each other. Okay? So this picture and this picture are the same size, or should be really close to the same size. Oops, don't move them. Okay. And then on the bottom, you're going to create 1 large document like this. And on the right hand side here, you'll create 3 small boxes. Why is this one bigger than the rest? Well, just because these two we're going to consider are like not favorite HDR photo, and this is going to be our best HDR photography, right? Now that you've created a couple more photos, I would advise you to file, save again, so you don't lose these pages moving forward. Now it's up to you whether you add strokes around these boxes or not. I'm not going to force you to. I kind of like it, but it doesn't have to be that. Doesn't have to be mandatory by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so moving right along. Pages 6 and 7 are going to be what we call your favorites photos. So they are throughout all the photos that you took, you're probably going to have some that you really like, or you'll be able to find some photos online that you think are really awesome photos, and you can place them into these boxes. Now, again, you're being marked mostly on how you lay out these boxes. So these 2 pages, you need to make sure that you get the boxes as close to the right shape and size as possible. So again, we're going to bring in a title from one of the other pages so we stay consistent. So we copy, we paste in the title, but this time it's going to be my favorite. How come I can't spell favorite? Is that right or wrong? I'm so tired. What is? Thank you. Anyways, okay. So then how do I spell it? Like that? Okay, anyways, as you can tell, I have a baby. Okay, here we go. Just means I'm tired. So for this page, we want to create some emphasis here, right? So we're going to have one box at the bottom that is a lovely, big, huge photo. And then we are going to create a box on the left-hand side here that is mostly the size of that. And then on the right-hand side here, as we've done numerous times now, you're going to create 4 boxes that are all the same size. Okay? So you'll have 6 photos on this page. And then across from it, you're just going to have 4 really big photos. So draw out your box all the way corner to corner. Right arrow, up arrow, and then just give yourself some space between the boxes. So control right arrow, control up arrow creates a whole bunch of different boxes. Okay, so I will zoom out just a little so you can see how that's laid out. Whoops. Yeah, so these are all going to be your favorite photos that you want to have just displayed. So they can be from anything. They can be focus and exposure. They can be portraits. They can be just simply ones you found online that you think are really cool photos. None of these have to be ones that you have taken. It's just you giving me a glimpse into what you think is a cool photo. Okay, what your favorite photos would be. So it could be stuff you've done, could be family photos, could be stuff online, whatever it is. Take your time and fill it in with good photos down the road. Okay, we are chugging right along. I know we're moving fast, but I would like to get this done as best as possible in today's class so that tomorrow you can spend time filling up all these boxes with the correct photos. Okay, moving on to the next page. So pages 8 and 9 now. Yes, sir, I agree. Okay, so pages 8 and 9. This is going to be your focus and exposure, and it's also going to be your high key, low key. Okay, so paste our title in here, and we'll go focus and exposure photos. And on this other page, it is going to be high key, low key. Or did we do panorama before we did high key, low key? We did, didn't we? Let's do panorama photos here. Yes, we did. Yeah, we haven't done it in here yet, no. But we did, I'm saying the assignments was panorama before high key, low key. So we'll stay in the same order that your assignments were assigned. Okay. For your focus and exposure, there was 15 photos. Okay. I'm not going to make you label them, so you don't have to have a lot of space between them all. You just have to have enough space so you can tell which picture's which. So again, we go back to our same process, rectangle frame tool, click, drag to the bottom. Now 15 photos gives us, we click right twice to give ourselves 3 columns, and then we want to have 5, 4 clicks up gives us 5 boxes. So that's 15 photos. And then again, control and use the up arrow and the right arrow to just create a little bit of space between those photos. When you let go, it will create all 15 boxes for you. And I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing all the way along. It's just adding a stroke to it to give it a little bit of definition as to what's going on. Okay. Now, panorama photos are the one time that I will let you guys put them the wrong way on the page because they're traditionally long and narrow. So for panorama photos, we're going to create just 3 long columns. So we make our big square, we use the right arrow twice, and then we're just going to create some space between those. So it'll give us, when we place them in later on, we'll have 3 big long panorama photos in those boxes. boxes. 。 And again, keep to whatever style you've been doing, whether it's a stroke or not a stroke or whatever. Try to keep things consistent. Okay, so we have 3 pages left and not a lot of pictures left. So if I'm remembering correctly, we have our, as Jeremy said, we have our high key, low key was the last ones we did. Okay, and we only did 6 high key, low key, right? 3 of each. So same as before. We click, we drag out. 2 clicks to the right gives us 3 columns. 1 click up gives us 2 rows. And then control right arrow, control up gives us space between these boxes. And we'll be able to place our high keys and our low keys into these boxes. On the last page, we're just going to call it my favorite photo. Okay, and this is just going to be one giant picture that goes across the entire page like this. The last page of your portfolio will be the marking guide. The marking guide that's online right now is set up with the old assignment. I have to fix it, so don't paste it in right now. But all you would have to do when we get there, I'll let you know when the proper marking guide is online. All you have to do for page 12 is you would simply just go File, Place, and this is obviously not a marking guide, but if it was, you would simply just take the picture and you would just drag it the whole width of the page, and it would be the marking guide on the very back cover of your booklet, would be the checklist of making sure you have everything included. Okay? So, thanks for watching this tutorial and putting up with my long, drawn-out way to make our portfolios. I know it's a lot of work, but in the end, you're going to end up with a really nice-looking portfolio. So stay tuned for part 2. We're going to work on that tomorrow and add in all our images. Have a good time.